Okay, well, it's 5:15, so it's time to start. And welcome everyone to our webinar, What Do Employers Look For in a New Lawyer? I'm Graham Jobling, I'm the Executive Director of the College of Law here in South Australia. As we gather on for this presentation, we recognise that many of us are on different lands of different traditional custodians. I'd like to acknowledge all of the traditional custodians of the lands we're all present on today, and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are participating in this event. I'd like to pay my respects to each of their elders, past, present, and emerging. When you're applying for your first job or looking for your next role, you really want to put your best foot forward. You want your resume to be noticed. You want to do really well at the interview, and you want to show that you have the skills employers are seeking. So our panel of experts today will explore these matters with you today, and share some tips and traps, etc., for you. So I have great pleasure in introducing the panel. Firstly, Emily Mortimer, Director of Human Resources at Piper Alderman. Among other roles, Emily is responsible for attraction and retention of human resources at Piper Alderman. Emily, just a brief introduction from you.
Thank you. What a pleasure to be here. Hi to everyone online. Just be conscious that we can't see you, so we can only see each other. So if we look like we're making funny faces, we apologise in advance.
That's right.
I have been with the firm for 12.5 years. I have looked after all of our offices and now look after our HR function nationally, as well as the HR team. I think for the most part, I love recruitment. There are a lot of people in HR that kind of fade away from that as they kind of go up in their career. It inspires me, and I get a lot of energy, from being able to recruit anything from, kind of front of house staff, law clerks, graduates, right through to our lateral partners. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to give some insights to you today that will be worthwhile. And I really thank the College of Law for putting this on. It's incredibly important for us to be able to share our knowledge and insights. Make sure that you use the chat function and feel free to kind of ask us any questions as we go along, and we'll make it as interactive as we virtually can.
Fantastic, thanks Emily. And Jodie DeVeries. Jodie is the Director of Business Services, the Crown Solicitor's Office. She's had over 20 years experience within the South Australian public sector. Jodie.
Thank you. Yes, so I am the Director of Business Services in the Crown Solicitor's Office, and the Crown Solicitor's Office is part of the Attorney General's Department. Our office employs about 180 lawyers, so we do a fair bit of recruiting of particularly graduate lawyers. We do recruit across a fairly broad range of practice areas, so I do come with a fair bit of experience in recruiting graduates particularly. And yeah, whilst my role sort of now focuses a little bit more on recruiting executive roles, I've had probably about 15 years experience that I can help with this conversation.
Fantastic, thanks Jodie. Now, Julia Arena. Julia, just give a quick wave so that, yep, Julia. Julia is an associate at Anderson Solicitors. She practices predominantly in the field of personal injury law and specialises in motor vehicle accident, public liability and medical negligence claims. And Aria Bolkus. Aria is a solicitor at Anderson Solicitors also, and hence we've got the two of them on the same screen there. And Aria works on a broad range of commercial and estate litigation matters in the South Australian Magistrates, District and Supreme Courts. Julia and Aria, if you'd just like to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. As you probably noticed, we're a little bit different to Jodie and Emily in that we're solicitors, probably have the least experience in recruiting, but Anderson's itself is a full service firm. We practice in civil, commercial, family and basic criminal law. In terms of the role that we play with respect to recruitment, Aria and I run our clerkship and PLT program. So we both actually started at the firm as clerks, and we noticed that there wasn't a streamlined process to hire clerks or graduates, and the firm was receiving a lot of resumes from a lot of really capable and qualified students and graduates, and we felt that there was a real opportunity to create a program that gave those students and graduates an opportunity to come and work with us. So with that in mind, we put together our clerkship and practical legal training program this year, actually, which effectively provides students with a 6-week clerkship or placement with us. And as I said, obviously our little point of difference is that the application process, the interviews and whatnot are all carried out by the two of us as opposed to HR or management. So a little bit different.
Fantastic. Aria, would you like to add to that at all?
I think Julia's covered it sufficiently, but yeah, it is. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So look, folks, that highlights how different different organisations and agencies, etc., will approach recruitment and so on. So just bear that in mind. That it just one experience you may have, it may be different somewhere else that you go to. So you're welcome to pop up any questions in the chat function. But firstly, Emily, what are you looking for in a graduate? And please include legal and non-legal skills and knowledge, etc. What is it that you're looking for?
Sure. Okay. I'll first start by re-emulating what you just said there, Graham. It is really important. There are actually very few HR practitioners within law firms in Adelaide. So most of the time you directly may be meeting the partner or a senior associate or an office manager, for instance. And so, you know, that kind of prepares you for your experience. Don't be daunted if you get a HR person. I assure you, we're all intending on being friendly. But by the same nature and the same virtue that your experience will change from firm to firm, what we look for in a graduate changes from practice to practice. So we do really try to be very clear in what we are seeking in all of our advertisements, in terms of being able to identify the area of law and what that area of law might require. So for instance, if we were recruiting in our litigation team, obviously from that perspective, probably more process early in the stages of the career. So you'll get used to, you know, court processes, you'll be dealing with barristers, you'll be confident in terms of your research skills. Potentially on the corporate side, we might not be asking you, you know, to be able to demonstrate your research skills, but we might be asking you to demonstrate your understanding of commercial application of law. And so naturally, you might kind of find that you're attracted to some of those particular roles. And it's really, I really encourage you to kind of follow that passion and follow the strength. We know most of the time, a lot of graduates don't actually know the area of law that they want to be kind of practicing in. And there's not a lot of firms that actually do a rotation system, you know, for instance, so you don't kind of get that formal program. It's kind of like you're landed in one particular area. So what we look for in a graduate, we look for diversity in the perspective that we want people to have come from different academic institutions. And that's really important to us because there's different training methodologies that are used in all of those universities, and they bring together different skills. We really focus in on your prior job experience. I'm not talking about clerkships. It's the value of Big W, the value of McDonald's, the value of having a casual, you know, kind of retail hospitality employment. Those skills are the ones that we're actually going to focus in on the interview process, because we know you don't actually have the legal skills to bring, but what we're trying to see is how you problem solve. How have you problem solved in those other environments, and potentially how have you dealt with conflict, so that we can see how you might deal with it as a predictive, you know, kind of for the future. Somebody that's really passionate is absolutely critical. And I mean passionate from the perspective about not knowing what you necessarily want to do, but passionate from the perspective about being eager to learn. And, you know, and eager to learn means eager to be told you're wrong, but wanting to find out why and how, you know, how did I get that wrong? Like, where was my misinterpretation? And that passion comes from that lifelong learning. You know, at the end of your degree, yes, you are fatigued. You go through a wonderful, you know, GDLP process with your provider, and then you get to the law, and boy, does the learning start. And that's what we want to see. We want to be able to see people that are going to bring that passion for lifelong learning, because even my partners here, they still say to me, the reason that they love this occupation is for the fact that they learn something new every single day. And we want candidates that display those types of qualities in an interview.
Fantastic, thank you. Jody, what about at the Crown? What are you looking for in a graduate?
So quite a few similarities to what Emily just was outlining. I mean, I'll take a very sort of general perspective, but the same sorts of things. So we're looking at what sort of part-time work you've had, you know, if you've done volunteer work, your interests outside of the law, you know, your academics, your life experiences. So we're looking for, you know, I guess we call it the sort of well-rounded applicant. You know, we're looking at what perhaps relevant electives you've done that, you know, suit our organisation. And through the process, we're looking at things, you know, like culture fit, so attitude. You know, how have you greeted the receptionist when you came in? How have you responded to feedback? If you've been given feedback, if perhaps you weren't successful, but, you know, there might be another role coming up at some other point. So things, you know, I think it's important to remember that every part of an application process is giving the organisation information.
Terrific, thanks. Just a quick one. If I haven't done the right electives, is that a deal breaker, or is that just one of the factors?
Not at all.
Yep, good,
Not
thanks.
at all.
Thanks, yeah. Julia and Aria, what about at Anderson's?
Yeah, so I'll perhaps touch on the legal skills. Again, fairly similar to what Emily and Jody have mentioned. I think as Emily sort of mentioned, you know, we don't expect people to come in, you know, knowing too much about exactly how to do the job. I think Emily was right in saying that you end up learning so much on the job in terms of how to actually practice as a lawyer. But there are some basic skills that we are looking for in terms of legal skills. And I think research skills is a big one. You know, that's always a task that's usually delegated to our clerks, our graduates, our junior lawyers. I think we often find that our younger practitioners are better at researching than some of our senior practitioners who perhaps research in a very different way back when they started practicing. So research skills that are learned at university are really very valuable around our office. The other couple of things I would say are some basic drafting skills. You know, again, a lot of this is learnt in practice, but, you know, the ability to draft a basic letter and perhaps drafting a basic sort of simple claim, those sorts of things are, obviously they'll go through, you know, more senior practitioners in terms of settling, but those basic abilities are really handy as well. And the other thing I would say is ascertaining legal issues and being able to apply those to a set of facts. Again, something that's, you know, at a very sort of basic or sort of primary understanding of that. But again, it's something that's useful when you're starting out in terms of legal skills anyway. And I'll pass on to Aria to talk about the non-legal skills.
Yeah, and then non-legal, we think probably initiative. You know, if I give the clerk a brief, for example, to do an index for a brief, and they come back to me and they say, look, I've done the index, do you want me to, you know, compile the brief? Initiative is really important in that, you know, the clerks to come through, all the junior lawyers. And then obviously communication skills, because a lot of what we do is teamwork, particularly within, you know, commercial litigation, for example. It's very important to be able to communicate where you're at with a task, how important a task may be, when a deadline may be. And then the last thing that I think we had was probably attention to detail. You know, these are all things that you can't really teach someone as well. It's just important to have in the back of your mind as sort of important things that we look at every day when you come in and work with us. Yeah.
Fantastic. And staying with you both at the moment, grade point average, is it important? If so, why? How?
Yeah, I like this question. I think it's an interesting one. It's one that we sort of tossed up a little bit as well. I think that GPA is important to an extent, but it's certainly not everything. You know, when we're assessing an application, we of course want to know that applicants have done reasonably well at university, and obviously we are looking at GPAs, and, you know, we ask for the academic transcript for a reason, but there are obviously a lot of other things that we're looking for when we're considering applications, like an understanding of experience, obviously a lot of things that have been touched on, but experience, interest, attention to detail, even in cover letters and how applicants present themselves. We were just sort of mentioning before, we had a couple of unfortunate applicants this year that had sort of submitted their cover letter, but it was addressed to the wrong firm. So it's little things like that that can make a really big difference. So the other thing I would probably mention is our interview process in some circumstances can be equally, if not more important than a GPA. Our phone and in-person interviews focus more on getting to know our applicants as people and, you know, whether they might be, as Jody mentioned, a cultural fit within our firm, which is really important to us and to our partners, and what our applicants' personal and communication skills might be like. So, yeah, it is important, but it's not everything. What would you?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think, you know, the GPA shows one's commitment to the degree and, you know, their ability to take on an opportunity and sort of run with it and value that opportunity, which is, of course, important in regards to the opportunity for a clerkship as well. But I think, you know, as a whole, I think you're an all-rounded person and your application should reflect that. So where you might lack or there might be a lesser GPA, your things like, you know, other clerkships that you've done or, you know, Big W, for example, balances that out. And I think that's important, you know, when you're doing your application process, to think of yourself as a whole, to understand your weaknesses and to understand your strengths and to put that forward. Yeah, that's what I would add. Yeah.
Thank you. Emily, what about at Piper Alderman?
Yeah, I'll be honest, we actually have a credit average, which we think is pretty reasonable in this market. We also really talk to candidates about saying that we think that that is reasonable for the nature of the work that we do, type of clients that we represent. A lot of our clients are listed on the stock exchange, so the nature of our work is not commoditized, so it's, you know, fairly bespoke. What we generally tend to see, and hopefully this might bring a bit of comfort to those that are online, your first year of your degree might be a bit lumpy and you're kind of finding your groove. You know, everyone said that legal studies was great in year 12 and then suddenly you've landed yourself in a law degree. Yeah, volume of reading times 50,000. And so generally you're finding your rhythm in your study techniques. That first year is not necessarily a display of what your best effort is. We tend to look at what the second year is showing to be able to say, okay, well, what did you learn from year one? You know, what was your growth mindset? You know, again, that lifelong learning application. You know, generally a question that I will ask all candidates, even if they have a, you know, what looks like a perfect transcript, is tell me about a subject that you wish you could do again. You know, what is one that you would like to have another crack at? Because in retrospect, you now understand a concept a lot better, and that might be for maturity, or it might be because some subjects are done out of order, which we often give advice to the universities on. And sometimes it just makes it really hard to be conceptually understanding something, and then all of a sudden, you know, 3 subjects later, you've got all these light bulb moments and think, oh, if only I knew that, I would have understood that really tricky concept later. And that's what being a lawyer is like. You're constantly on this journey of learning, and you'll constantly have these light bulb moments. And we want to be able to see people that can articulate why particular things happened in their transcript. So a little bit like what Aria and Julia are talking about. Some people have the ability to be able to get straight HDs. You know, they might be living at home. They're not required to be able to have a job because they're financially subsidised by their parents. Other people are living out of home. They're having to pay rent every week. You know, they might be working close to full-time and have a full-time course study, you know, load. And so that is going to impact their ability to be able to actually achieve their full effort. But good firms put that all into context, a little bit like what Aria and Julia are saying. It is a whole package, and very few firms look just to the transcript, just as it reads. It's a little bit of an equation. We're looking at things from the cover letter, we're looking at things from the CV, we're looking at things from the transcript, and we're looking for that whole of picture, you know, when we're looking at it. I often say to candidates, you know, if you're a bit uncomfortable about why or where your kind of end of transcript results sit, find a way to eloquently talk about that in your cover letter, because cover letter, I can tell you, is far more important than a transcript, much like what Aria and Julia are saying. Teaching an adult to write is very difficult, and a lot of the work that we do at Piper Alderman is advice work. And so from that perspective, we want to be able to see how someone constructs something. You know, how do they articulate? You know, is it concise or is it too wordy? Is it too casual? You know, and from the basis of that cover letter, we're saying we could really develop this person along with all these other factors that we can see. But I say to people, you know, talk about something in your transcript. If there's something that you wished you could do again, highlight it. You know, if you want to be able to say, you know, in the second year of your studies there was a family situation and it requires no further detail, but that family situation was your priority, put that in your cover letter. Like, give us context. Otherwise it can be very difficult when, you know, as a firm, you know, we you know, for instance, we just did our Melbourne graduate recruitment and we had 467 applications for 4 jobs. So give us the right amount of detail so that we can make sure that we are assessing the candidates on the very best of information that we can get.
Fantastic. Jodie, what about over at the Crown as far as GPA is concerned?
I don't think I have a lot more to add, to be honest. I think we're exactly the same. It's important, but it's part of your story. It's just one part of the story. So yeah, I just echo everything that the ladies have already said.
Fantastic, thanks. Now, staying with you, Jodie, one of my next questions was going to be, are you looking for experience? What sort of experience are you looking at with applicants in terms of part-time, full-time work, etc.? And you've all made it very clear that it doesn't really matter what that work has been, you're interested. Why is that? What? Just a brief answer. What's it telling you about someone?
Well, I think it tells us a whole heap of things about a person, but I think, you know, depending on what it is, it can tell us about commitment, it can tell us about your time management skills, it can tell us, sorry, and I've just lost my notes because I had this all ready to go and I've lost my page. But yeah, I think it can tell you a lot more about the person, you know, the stuff that we want to see our applicants have. Yeah.
Fantastic. And over at Anderson's?
Yeah, I think it's important for us, much of what Jodie sort of mentioned, but it does give us an ability to understand the skills that people might have developed in their casual jobs that are really important in law firms. You know, the ability to work in a team environment. As Aria mentioned before, a lot of what we do is teamwork, you know, whether that's working with senior practitioners or practitioners that are at the same level of you as you. A lot of what we do is working together. So an ability to work in a team, leadership skills, you know, if somebody has, back to Big W again, if somebody has been in management at Big W, you know, that makes a difference. We know that those people can come in with leadership skills and use those skills when they need to. Organisation, huge in law firms. Time management, again, is a really big one. Efficiency. So all of those sorts of skills that come from casual jobs are really important.
Yeah, I think the same. And also I think, you know, people don't come to law firms because they want to. We're usually dealing with people at their worst. So those sorts of skills that you learn, you know, how to deal with customers when they're angry, for example, or unhappy with you. We are a business and we need to make sure that our customers or our clients are happy with our services. So all the things that you learn in your casual jobs or your jobs outside of the law are really important in that sense. And I think they teach you how to respond, how you respond, and how you best deal with people and how people deal with you, which is, you know, invaluable.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, which you didn't ask, but is that not having any legal experience is not fatal. I think we've had some applicants come to us feeling really sort of concerned about the fact that, you know, that their resume only shows, you know, work at Big W or casual jobs as opposed to any legal experience. And that is certainly not something that we would consider fatal at all. You know, I think for us, it's even more important that we give those people an opportunity. And if we can be the first firm that gives, you know, those students an opportunity, then that's great for us. So yeah, definitely, I think keeping in mind that having no legal experience is definitely not fatal either.
So don't stress if you've missed all those clerkship roles. You've still put your best foot forward. Emily, what would you add to any of that?
Yeah, I was actually about to make the point that Aria and Julia just made in terms of quite commonly the first comment that I or my team will receive is, I'm so sorry I haven't done a clerkship, I applied. You don't have to apologise. It's okay. We know that they're hard to get. You know, and again, you know, at that point, I might ask somebody a question in terms of what did you learn from that interview process? You didn't get the role, but what did you learn about how you performed, or, you know, the message that you wanted to sell about yourself? And it's really important to be able to go into those interview processes. I know there's a question in the chat a little bit about this, but
yes.
In terms of like, it's about going in confident. Don't go in thinking that you don't have what we want. We've invited you in. We want to talk to you. We want to meet you. And we can see that you don't have legal experience. That's okay. We're trying to find out whether we would like to give you legal experience, and you need to perform at your best, in that interview, kind of environment. From HR school back in, the university days, it was very much to being able to say, if you've got a perfect candidate with a perfect transcript that's never had a job, park them and take the student that has had to work at McDonald's for 35 hours a week and they might have only got C's and D's, because what you will get from that candidate in the long term is going to be far more rewarding than what you might get from another candidate. And that is about that client service skill that Aria and Julia are talking about. We need people that want to service both internally and externally, and we need people to be able to demonstrate that. There might be some people on the call who are a bit nervous at this point because they think to themselves, damn it, I actually didn't have a part-time job. But that's also okay, because what I say to people is, do you have younger siblings? Are you required to be able to help, with babysitting? Are you required to be able to help to do sport runs, on the weekend? Do you volunteer at anything that you're passionate about? Some people are really into sport, and that stops them from having a job because they're committed to their training, they're committed to their performance requirements. And I say to them, again, don't say sorry, that's a job. You're demonstrating, or you're demonstrating all of those things, you're just demonstrating it in a different capacity. And that's what we're interested in being able to find out, which is why we're so often, trying to find out what people do in their own time. We're trying to find out all those little add-ons.
Fantastic, thank you. Look, and we'll go to that question that's been put up on the chat board now. What do you expect? How do you expect a smooth interview to go? What are you looking for in that interview? Jody, I'll start with you.
Sure. I think somebody who has prepared. So when I say prepared, I mean for us as a government organisation, that they understand a little bit about the organisation. One of the things that we sort of have quite often is people come for an interview and then they sort of say, so what is it you do at the Crown? So yeah, having, I think, prepared, so knowing a little bit about the organisation, and maybe this speaks more to the cover letter, but tailoring and targeting your application to, why it is you want to apply. And so that flows through to the interview as well. I think one comment I will make is that we are all human, and being nervous in an interview is completely okay. And the one thing that I will say to people is, when you might take a short moment to gather your thoughts, etc., it always feels a million times worse than what it actually is. And I guess I just really wanted to reiterate that nerves are okay. I've seen quite a few interviews with graduates sort of go from worse to worse to worse to really, really bad, because they have almost given up. They've thought, oh my goodness, I didn't answer that question well, and it goes on a downhill slide. So I guess be forgiving of yourself. And if you need to take a minute to say, look, I'm super nervous, I just need a breath, just say it. The other thing I would say is, if you know that nerves do get the better of you, and I am one of those people that, I do get nervous, yep. Take your notes in with you. There is nothing wrong with having notes that you can refer to with some good examples or things that you really wanted to get across that you can just refer to at the end to make sure you've got, what you really wanted to say across. I encourage people, if that's what you need to do, then do it.
Brilliant. Aria and Julia.
Well, I think that, we've tried to make our interview process a bit more relaxed, in the sense that we try and bring out, the personal skills the person has. I think you can't really teach people those skills. You either have it, if you're the cultural fit, then you are, which is important to us, because we've worked hard, and, each organisation that you will apply to will have a different sort of culture. So yeah, in that sense, we've tried to make it more relaxed and make it flow. And we really just want to see what you are like as a person, really.
Yeah, I think Jodie probably touched on quite a few of them there, but the only thing I think I would probably add is not to overthink the answers to the questions. You know, if something comes to mind, then, you know, speak what comes to mind. Don't overthink it. Don't think about what you think we want to hear. Think about, you know, what comes to mind for you. If something comes to mind, then, you know, that's what you should be verbalizing. So yeah, don't focus too much on what you think we want to hear. We want to get to know you as a person. So yeah, don't overthink things. And I think, as Jodie sort of said, if you are nervous, I think preparation is definitely key. We want to see people that are coming in prepared. And yeah, I would definitely say that as well. If you do prepare notes, there's nothing wrong with bringing them in.
Fantastic. Emily, anything to add there?
No, I think it's been really well encapsulated. I think
Yeah.
the being yourself is truly important, and that is definitely your best strategy. Quite often people have in their mind that the interview is going to be far harder than what it actually is. So, you know, very much our interview process reflects our culture. So, you know, you can expect an interview in reverse with us. You know, we don't wait to the end to ask about what you're interested in. We start with that. You know, what did you do on the weekend? What are you looking forward to this coming weekend? How are you going to spend, you know, your university break? You know, we want to kind of do that icebreaker so that people just go, oh, you're human. Because like
Yeah.
Jodie says, you know, like we get nervous sometimes interviewing candidates too. You know, we're nervous, you know, sometimes we'll be like, oh, you know, like it's so lovely to meet you, and we're a bit gushy. But that's because, you know, we're excited for the next generation of lawyers, you know, to be able to come into our firm. And we do, you know, kind of take it with, you know, a true passion, you know, that we're excited and we want them to show kind of the same excitement. So we try to use all of the icebreakers that we can. I would also say just come prepared with your questions. You know, if we ask you at the end, do you have any questions? Don't think, damn it, I didn't think of that. And then try to think of a really poor question, because that kind of ends the interview really poorly. Most of the time I will say that candidates will say, oh, I do have some pre-prepared questions, and they'll go through them. And then they'll say, oh, actually you answered them all. And we'll say, well, that's great. Then that's a good interview for us both, you know, if we've given you that information. But, you know, do come in with your questions, and nothing is too silly. We know that you're going to have random questions, and we're happy to answer them.
Fantastic. And staying with you, Emily, and then we'll go to everyone else. Your firm's going to invest a lot of time in developing graduates. What do you hope to receive in return?
I think it is coming back to that effort and initiative. It's coming back to that wanting to be able to improve yourself constantly. The, you know, kind of career of a lawyer, or the trajectory of a lawyer, is not a smooth one. It tends to be a little bit lumpy, where you kind of get to a period of like expertise and you think, oh, going so well, and then we notice just be able to say, oh, you're handling those tasks really well, so we want to stretch you and we want to give you the next set of tasks. And then your performance dips because you've never done those things, and, you know, you have to go through the learning curve again, and then you'll get to be really good at those things, and we'll keep giving you new things, and then some of those other things will go off to law clerks and paralegals, etc., as you kind of grow. But it's that ability to be able to be constantly changing, but being really hungry, you know, for that change. I think the minimum things that we expect are certainly some of the things that Aria and Julia talked about earlier. We rely on junior lawyers for attention to detail. Partners are not great at it. You know, they're good at the strategy and they're good at the vision. They expect you to know court dates. They expect you to make sure that the clauses are referencing the right clauses within the document. They're not going to really look at those things. But if you don't do those things, it kind of ruins the trust in the relationship. So doing the things that are in your control and doing them well, that's what we ask for from our graduates.
Great. Jodie.
Yes, so for us, we really want people that are engaged in the work that they're doing, invested in our culture. Really importantly, and Emily touched on this one, wanting to learn, wanting to grow, wanting to learn from those around them, wanting to listen, and, you know, just somebody who really is aspiring to be the best version of themselves. You know, it's that attitude stuff again, that can-do attitude, happy to help teammates, willing to do what they need to do to get a job done, and a bit of a passion, I think, a passion to deliver good outcomes for the client. And in our instance, the client is the Government of South Australia. So ultimately, it's for the people of South Australia. So that is what I would say about us.
Thank you. And Aria and Julia?
I think I'd probably say most of the same things that Emily and Jody have mentioned. I think from our perspective, we're hoping to receive good work that's completed efficiently, and graduates that come into our office with a positive, can-do and willing attitude, to learn and to challenge themselves and to be a part of our team and assist where they can. And I think, as Jody said, it's a real significant thing for us, I think, and I know Aria and I have both sort of been there, starting our careers here in, being willing to do what it takes to get the job done, and having that initiative to think, okay, what might be next to get this task done? How can I help the partner to get this to conclusion? So, and I think it's, we know that junior lawyers are not always going to get it right. We certainly haven't, and nor do we expect them to. But I think it's just really looking for people that are willing to do their best and willing to learn and, receive that sort of constructive criticism and feedback. And I think Jody mentioned as well, just being able to listen. The other thing I would say is, for us as well, just from a firm perspective, having sort of juniors around has really changed the dynamic of our firm as well. So it's a really positive experience for us, having clerks, graduates, junior solicitors. I don't want to say that they've sort of brought more life to our firm, but I think it has reinvigorated our firm and the way that we operate. So, we hope that by bringing people in, we're giving them an interesting and rich experience, and that, it's a positive sort of early experience in the law for them as well. We know that a lot of people sometimes can have experiences that don't go the way that they hope they would, but yeah, so we're hoping that we're giving people a positive experience as well. I don't know if you would.
Yeah, I think you touched on pretty much all of it. I think the other thing that's important to remember is that we benefit just as much from you as what you benefit from us. So it's a give and take relationship, and if it works really well, it can be really good for everyone in the team and the firm as a whole. So it's important to you trust in yourself as well in that process.
Great. Look, I'm going to cross to one of the participant questions now. What do you assume of students who have taken a break after their law school and have not applied too many job opportunities immediately after their graduation? Who wants to start there? Emily.
I'm happy to take that. We have taken plenty of what you can be no career or second career applicants in terms of coming to terms with what it was they actually wanted to do within the law. And I think that pressure actually comes more so from the end of university experience rather than not necessarily wanting to practice. I think a lot of students kind of end their university. Some don't go to do their GDLP program straight away. They kind of defer that because they want to, but they're not really sure in what context. And I think that's because, university, not intentionally, but creates a lot of pressure to make a lot of decisions very quickly. Are you going to go private practice? Are you going to go in-house? Are you going to go consulting? Are you going to go public sector? Or all of the other myriad of options that are available. I think a little bit just like what the hospitality and retail jobs of Big W kind of teach. We look for in the times when we could travel, they were fabulous. But what did that gap year or gap years kind of provide for you? We've hired a candidate that bought a ramshackle of a house and took 2 years to be able to do it up. But the notion of their negotiation skills and their understanding of contracts was second to none during that experience. So it's always about being able to demonstrate what is transferable. And I don't think that there's any problem with that. I often say to candidates, the profession is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So in the same sense of, if you don't have to rush to get admitted, you don't have to feel that pressure. You can do a partial course load, you don't have to do a full course load. Run your own race, but be able to speak to it confidently is the thing. Don't say sorry for making decisions that you've made. Go into it saying, I'm really pleased that I did that, but I'm now ready. And quite often you'll get candidates that are, 100% engaged.
Fantastic. And that's something that someone may draw attention to in their application, do you think, Emily?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yep.
Anyone else want to add anything to that one? No? That's all right. Now, tips and traps. This is like a free form. Tips and traps for young practitioners and graduates, etc. Aria and Julia, shall we start with you?
Things that we would say, we understand obviously, that graduates are applying for a number of different positions and I think we've all sort of touched on this before, but take your time in your applications. I know that, people are sending out applications to a number of different firms, but, I think it's even just the basic tailoring to, making an understanding of, the firm that you're applying for, a little bit about the work that they do, a little bit about what they're looking for. That can make a really big difference. As I said, we had that couple of slight issues with cover letters being addressed to the wrong firm. That, for us can symbolise, some potential issues with attention to detail. So, I think it's putting that effort into your applications. And I know that they can be tedious and painful. We've been there as well, but I think that is something that's really important. The other thing I would probably say is, and again, we've seen it with a lot of our applicants this year, but don't overcommit yourself. I think from our perspective, we would say you're better off, giving your all to a couple of sort of extracurricular activities as opposed to sort of spreading yourself thin, stressing yourself out, trying to apply for a number of different clerkships or graduate programs or positions, and finding out that you're just doing sort of okay at all of them as opposed to, reaching excellence in a couple of them. So I think that would probably be the main two. I mean, I think the other thing I would say is don't be afraid to ask questions. I think that's a really important one. I think sometimes lawyers can get bad raps in the sense that, they are time poor, so it can be a little bit difficult and it can be a little bit difficult to approach lawyers sometimes. But I think what people have to understand is that a lot of us do enjoy mentoring and are happy to answer questions. So never be afraid to ask questions, and no question is a silly one. I think the only other last thing I would say is try not to panic and just enjoy the process. Yeah. Eventually it will all work out. Enjoy your time at university. Know that you will build a network eventually. You will find a job. You will work out what area you want to work in. They would be my main ones.
Yeah, I think leading on from that, I think in addition to the gap year sort of topic, just remembering that, it's not linear in the sense that your career will go, in all different ways. And I think the most important thing that I've learned in the past, year and a half, 2 years, is just to take every opportunity to run with it, to put everything you've got into it, even if it's not what you think, you really wanted to do, because it will open up doors for you and you don't know where those doors will end up. And I think that's really exciting for young lawyers. So don't stress out about where you might be starting because, it'll be good again. Yeah.
Thank you. Jodie, any tips and traps?
Yeah, I've got a few. I think some of these have already been touched on, but I really think these are the basics that if you don't get right, then you really put yourself on the back foot. So just things like ensuring that the cover letter is addressed to the right person. There's more times than I can count than that has happened. Copying and pasting from other letters and, having it twice in, for example. So being really, really careful about proofreading, making sure, it's clean of spelling errors, etc. Keep your application really simple. I think there can be a tendency perhaps to overthink it. We get some ones with crazy fonts that are really difficult to read. And I guess I just make the point to applicants that we've got a lot to get through, and if you can help us make our job easier by, making it really easy to read, that's appreciated. Things like if it says, your cover letter should be 2 pages, don't put it in 8 font and try and squeeze it down so that it meets the. So, follow the instructions. you know, just some really simple things like, have you told your referee that you have applied for this job? Give them some context about the job so that when they're asked, they can actually give some really useful information to the person that's asking, relevant to the role that you've applied for. I have had a couple of times where I've rung a referee and they've actually not remembered the person. So, you know, just making sure your referees are current and they're they know that you've applied. My last point, and I can't believe I actually have to say this, but have a professional email address. I have had times where people have had
Jodie, that's all the entertainment I get.
Yeah, have an appropriate email address, voicemail, and make sure your details are up to date. They're just some of the real basic things that you need to get right.
Good. Emily.
Tips and I'll add a few extra ones that haven't been covered. Answer your phone. It's a test. I don't mind text exchange. I really don't. But it's not my preferred option to start the relationship. So leaving a message for a candidate to be able to invite them for interview, having to follow it up 24 hours later, 48 hours later, and then you think, oh, wonder if there's a problem with their voicemail. Okay, so you email them and then you text them. But like Jodie's saying, make our lives easier. And, you know, pick up the phone, be brave. We know that telephone conversations can be a bit awkward, and most of the time you avoid, you know, any phone number that you don't actually know. But if you're applying for jobs and you're getting phone calls, that's great. Answer the phone. Again, I would think, you know, be really polite in your communication with people. I find that sometimes because people are quite nervous, you know, on the phone, they'll almost come across as a little bit abrupt or rude. And I think it's really important to kind of, you know, take an exhale before you answer the phone and think, okay, this might be, you know, one of the applications that I've applied for. And, you know, I think the tips and traps, they comes to preparation for the interviews as well. And a little bit like what Jodie's talking about, I think cover letters are about quality, not about quantity. I've read some exceptional cover letters in my career that were more than 4 pages long, but I was excited to be able to turn the page. And I've read some cover letters. So for instance, in my recent 450 plus graduate applications for Melbourne, I would say 75 of them used the template that was available on Google. That disappoints me because I think, well, you know, how much effort did you really go to be able to find a cover letter for a law graduate? You didn't personalize it, you know, you didn't kind of make it about you or about us. And so then that kind of gives me the impression that potentially you just applied for, you know, a bit of a backup, and that we're not a firm that's of interest to you. Whereas those candidates that do a really good job and personalize it and tell us a little bit about themselves, we're so better prepped, you know, for the interview. And I know, sorry, I'm just going to reference the person that asked. Vanessa asked the question in relation to about a smooth interview. The better your application, the better the interview process is going to be, you know, because we know a little bit about you and we can personalize those questions and we can actually have a really nice conversation rather than it being a bit, you know, kind of Q&A or a bit disjointed, I suppose. And having a really good application is your best tool the night before in terms of being able to review it a number of times and get that dialogue in your head and think, yep, these are the 5 things I really want this firm to know before I leave. And my only other piece of advice is, if you're a nervous person, don't arrive 25 minutes before your interview, because you are going to see other candidates arrive and depart during that time. Arrive 5 minutes before. You know, you can go coffee shop or, you know, have a little walk around the block, you know, to be able to use your time wisely before. But you're only going to get yourself more nervous if you're having to wait and think, oh, only 2 minutes has passed, it's still 20 minutes to go. So about 5 minutes is a really appropriate time to be kind of arriving before your interview time, and you'll probably feel a lot better for it.
Terrific. Now, I've got a question there that we will answer via email afterwards, but one there that I will ask: do firms ever hire students into clerkships who are not in their penultimate year yet, e.g. honours graduates, 3rd year students, etc.?
I can talk from Piper Alderman perspective. So we take third year and up students. So we take from that whole range of cohort. Our application is not wedded to anything beyond the fact that you have to be in your third year.
Third year. Jody?
Same.
Same? And
We're the same.
you're the same. Okay. Okay. And yeah, Stuart's asked a question. I will get some more detail on that one because I'm just not sure the context of that one. And okay. How do you prefer for applicants approach your firm? What would you expect? Is a random application suitable? Is it only when you're calling for applications? When? How would you like people to approach the firms and agency?
We accept applications every day. We understand that, again, people kind of make decisions at different points along the spectrum. Some candidates are contacting us the first day of their third year, to be able to say, I want to put in an expression of interest. These are the reasons why. I think that I'd be a really good fit to your firm, ABCD. And sometimes we've got opportunities to be able to meet with those candidates, that where we can kind of foresee a role might be, 3 to kind of, 3 months or so down the track. I think from the perspective, preferably for me, I do prefer the emailed applications, and we do publicise our direct email accounts. But I think I prefer that from the perspective of I get to find out a little bit about the candidate. Sometimes because candidates don't present as well over the phone, they're not giving their kind of best impression. So I think if they, kind of present their best selves in that application, their transcript, a nice email, you get a sense, of the person. And I think, there are a lot of times where we will just say to the candidate, listen, we don't have anything right now, but would you like to be able to meet for a coffee in the next 2 weeks? I'd like to know a little bit more about what you're trying to achieve so I can understand what I'm looking out for you for. And I think that people take, kind of really well to those, opportunities. Firms do genuinely use their talent bank. So I have been asked by candidates to say, oh, what do you actually do with it? And we really do, so from the perspective of sometimes we might have large pieces of litigation where we don't have potentially a formal clerkship that we can offer, but we might be able to offer 6 to 8 weeks in document production or assisting with witness statements, etc., like assisting the admitted practitioners. And so we're always looking, to be able to say we have actually got this great cohort of people that are available to us, but often the stars need to align to be able to know, when and where that situation kind of might come up.
So it can be luck, but go ahead and yeah. What about at Anderson's?
We have a clerkship sort of portal at the moment on our website where applications open June, July each year, and applicants can apply during that time. We have sort of streamlined it, so we do sort of have one application process that should see us through the year. But in the same sense, we do also have that network, the talent bank that we do refer back to all the time in the event that we need more people, or we might be busier leading up to Christmas or whatever it may be. And then I think with just lawyers that apply, we have the website portal allows them to apply anytime as well.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting point sort of made by Emily there about talent banks. I think we've certainly sort of seen that this year, particularly with clerks and sort of PLT graduates that do come in to work for us. We've had a sort of couple of openings in terms of actual solicitor positions, and when it is a junior solicitor that we're looking for, we do end up going back to that talent bank of clerks or graduates that we've had in that have fit really well with us, that we know, work efficiently and work well. So, it may be the case that you come and clerk with us or do your practical legal training with us and we don't have a position for you at that time. But it can often be the case that that's the first place we go when we do have a junior solicitor position available. So, so it's using those opportunities and then reverting to the talent bank after. So we definitely do something with the ones that, potentially don't go anywhere and the ones that do, and then finish up their 6 weeks or so with us.
We do still network with them too. I think it grows our network as well, and, to learn, all the people that are coming into the profession, which is good.
Good. Jody, more formal with government or not?
Yes, it is. We aren't able to accept applications that we don't have a process for. So we do sort of quite regular call outs for specific roles, and we can only accept applications whilst those processes are underway. I mean, I'm always more than happy for someone to pick up the phone and have a chat, but yeah, we are sort of bound by more formal rules around that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So look, the sort of general sense that I get, and we've got a couple of minutes, the general sense that I get is people should be checking websites. Obviously, a small firm, and none of you are from a small firm, but a small firm, it might be the one person running the whole show, and therefore there may not be anything on the website, and so maybe they should send a general inquiry and how should I apply, etc. But small, medium, larger small firms, medium firms, larger firms will generally have the processes available to people and the contacts available to people on their website, won't they? And that's where people will get a bit of a sense about the culture of the firm as well, and certainly what the firm does and so on. So, so people should be looking out for clues before they actually head out that way. Look, let me see. No, I haven't got any other questions on tap. Anything else anyone want to say before we call it a night? We've got just a couple of minutes to go. No, then I want to say
be yourselves.
Yeah. Look, and something that I picked up on, which I really think is very important in everything we do, and that's reflection. Reflection is one of the greatest opportunities we have in reflecting on what's occurred, how can I put that into use in the future? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? If I've applied and I was unsuccessful, will you give me feedback, Emily?
We will.
Yep.
Yes.
That's Anderson's.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jody.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So get some feedback, do some reflection, and use reflection not as a time to put yourself down, but a time to learn and to grow, and to put that into practice for next time. And you know, I encourage you all to have a great journey and make the very most of the information that you've gathered today and any other information you have, and wish you all the very, very best. And Emily, Aria, Julia, Jody, thank you all for giving up your time and assisting us to get a bit of an idea on what it is that employees look for in a new lawyer. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.